Welcome to the MBD podcast, the show where we dig into what's actually working or not when it comes to scaling businesses with the people who've been there. Today, special guest has been there, and I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Well, hi, Jason. I'm Lyndi Thompson. Thanks for having me. I live over in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm currently at Every.io leading marketing, but I'm delighted to be here, and let's have a good conversation.
Appreciate it. So get right into it. When you go and you're trying to scale a business, what are things that you see
Yeah.
businesses doing incorrectly that they can essentially, the low-hanging fruit, get into right away?
Jason, that's kind of a big question, but I think you and I have chatted a little bit about this before. But my sense here is that the first thing I try to do is just ask a lot of questions and get kind of a sense of what's going on in their business. And my philosophy has always been, what is the system? What is happening across the whole business? I think a lot of times folks come to me and they're like, hey, let's change the paint of the car. And I'm like, cool. How old are the tires? Or like, have you changed the oil? And like, what do you plan to do with this vehicle? Are you taking it to the track? Are you just going down to Oregon? Like, where are you going? So really the beginning of my conversations with business owners, I'm trying to understand what's going on and where I'm able to fit in. Often, I think marketers will jump right to like, oh, well, let's do some sort of campaign. And I think in some cases that's right. In other cases, I feel like we should kind of evaluate what might be reasonable for that particular business owner or startup or even a large growth company. What's reasonable to get across the line so they get kind of a sense of learnings. And when I think about learnings, it's like, I don't think enough businesses have enough information to inform their decisions. And so how do we get them to a point where they can, right, start to learn? So probably the number one thing I see all businesses, I don't care if you're a small business working in horses or you're a large company and you have millions of dollars in your budget, or you're a medium-sized company trying to like drive revenue, is follow-up. And I think a lot of times is like folks have just not been in the seat of like a salesperson or an early entrepreneur long enough to know that most of the game is nurture and follow-up. And I think we're in this kind of age right now where fast, quick content, the word viral went really exciting for a long time. And that might give somebody a little bit of a serotonin boost. And they might have a little bit of association with you, but really that connection, that loyalty, that customer that you want to expand and grow with your business with you or grow their business with you, it's going to come from nurturing. And so I see that all the time is that folks don't want to capture the email. They don't want to add it into their system. They don't want to do the follow-up. They don't want to like think about like, oh, should I invite this person to another event? What is this person's experience with me? They don't get feedback loops. Like they don't think like a salesperson. And I think that that's a big miss.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how many places I've gotten into and I'm like, hey, you need an onboarding campaign. Let's do,
Yes. Yeah.
let's do an email follow-up after they receive your product or service, survey them, say, hey, how did it go? Can we get some feedback? What can we do better? What did we do well? And emails are like, that's the money because it costs so much less to continue to market to your current user base than it does to acquire new consumers.
Yeah. And that's a perfect question too, Jason. It's like the piece there is like, you have to actually have the email, right? And then a lot of folks don't know how important it is to run those email campaigns.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of basics, and it's surprisingly, there's a few big companies on my resume that you'd be look at and you're like, wow, those are great companies. They have really good brands. One of them, I won't say my name, when I went in, they had 14 email systems. And so they had no sense of like who was emailing who, what the cadence was. And so part of my job there to even begin running demand campaigns was just consolidating all of them down to one. So yeah,
I actually like going into companies like that because it's just easy work.
Sure.
You're just like, okay, sure. I got like months. I got to get this thing together before we can actually optimize and run it efficiently.
Yeah.
And it makes your value seem so much more. And you're like, oh, we never thought about that. And you're like, you guys, put all the emails in one place. Clean your data so that way we can leverage it. Capture this field. This is broken. Yeah. It's, the operations of it is always fun. No, okay. So you get in there, you're like, all right, here's the low hanging fruit. First, we need to identify what's going on so that way we can essentially develop the real strategy of how we're going to execute to get to that point. So then now you've got this, things are starting to run. What are you looking for next to drive awareness, sales, and consumers?
I think part of it starts with like getting that in alignment with the owner of the company or whoever's going to be doing the work. that this is something they want to commit to.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we align on, hey, we want to learn about this new demographic we're going after. Maybe we're launching a new product, whatever. Okay, how long do you think you need to learn from that? And they're like, oh, probably a couple of months. And so we kind of like break down those hypotheses, right? Is that true? How much money do you have to spend on it? Are you committed to follow up? What's your plan to keep these people warm? What's your kind of interim offer? Kind of, marketing folks will throw around like top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel.
Yeah.
But for most entrepreneurs and small businesses, they don't really that's not a normal concept, right? Even as them as a consumer, they don't think about like, oh, I'm a top of funnel consumer. Like nobody thinks like that, right? That's just not a thing.
I need awareness for this product right now.
I just don't understand what kind of product I should buy. Yeah, they don't. So it's so funny how there's the disconnect, right, from our own personal experience to how we operate our businesses. So I try to align on like, are you really committed to learning? And if you are really committed to learning, what does that learning look like? And is it okay that if we learn that this audience is not really your target audience, there's not really a fit? Is that okay? Can you guys tolerate that? From a financial perspective, from a resource perspective, from a time perspective, can you afford to learn? And if they can't, then let's adjust our approach. And so that's another piece that I try to think about when I'm working with these folks. I think the next piece is, let's say they align, we're like, yes, we can afford it. We've got people, resources, we're committed. I want to look for like leading indicators, not perfect metrics, to help inform decisions, right? So let's say they say, hey, I want to sell this new product. I have a brand new audience. I've got $1,000 to spend. I go, whoa, okay, awesome. We don't have to start at the basics, right? Like, have you ever talked to these people before? Is there a way you can get in front of them before we run an ad campaign? Can we get some feedback going? So we start to think about like building this approach where it's not just spend and then hope the data tells us something. It's like, okay, do we have enough working knowledge to actually like help this learning experience go well? So let's say it all goes well. They're like, yes, absolutely. We talked to people, we've got enough of a sense. We think this works. We have these messages. And they're like, most of our audience is on, let's say they say Stack Overflow, right? Or they say Facebook or whatever. Okay, great. Let's put a little budget there. And Stack you can't because you have to start with like 30K, but that's okay. Let's say they had it and they're like, okay, we're going to learn for 3 months with 30K. Awesome. What do we want to learn? One, do people even engage with it at all? And I think that this is something that's like hard for folks to wrap their head around, is that it's okay if your learning metric is just engagement. Like that can be okay. So then the next step, of course, everybody wants it to be revenue, and we'll get there. But for most companies that I work with are mostly B2B, a few are B2C, but mostly B2B. The next step is like, could you actually get them to be interested enough to give you their information? And so I know all of us marketers were like, oh, we kind of get green when we hear about lead gen forms. But that is kind of the first indication, the first conversion point where you're like, hey, they trusted us enough with whatever message, offer, whatever, to give them their email address. And that's a win. And so then it's on us to do that follow-up work, to learn from them, maybe do some enrichment, kind of understand them more, do some surveys, invite them to more programs, like start to like build a relationship. And I think that is hard for a lot of startups because most of them are trying so hard to build the product. They're trying so hard to just make sure that the bugs don't hurt their existing business. They're trying really hard to set up all these systems and wrestle with compliance and like all these different things. So they tend to look at me or marketers like me as someone who can kind of help navigate that, right? Can you see the system and kind of like navigate that learning path? So I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah, no, great. One of the things you say is that, and I struggle with this because I don't like working with budgets that are $1,000.
Yes.
And you say that, but a lot of companies have $1,000 budget because they want to test it because it's coming out of pocket. So what are things that they can do to get the most out of that $1,000 and stretch it?
I mean, I've always been a fan of like, own your community, own your database. So put that $1,000 and getting people into the world where you can communicate with them. So don't spend the $1,000. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so when I think of the campaign, I think of it as you're essentially trying to buy emails with that $1,000.
Kind of, yeah. Or it could be a conversation, right? For one of the nonprofits I work with, they'll do campaigns to just like learning of like, let's do a campaign around an animal that you've lost, and like tell us your favorite memory about them, right?
Okay.
And so for that, like, it gets UGC. Engagement, it gets comments, it gets people to like the page, it gets us a better understanding of what they care about.
So
more people start engagement, right?
Yeah. So you're building a community and engagement around that community, essentially to have social proof. On the backside, you're trying to get those emails, but people engaging with the page, you could then run another campaign too. So you could do essentially like target these people who've engaged with the page on these social platforms. So it's interesting because a lot of companies come out and they're like, yeah, I want to do a conversion campaign. I just want sales. I don't want to do the social proof or community building aspect of it.
How does that work for you as a consumer? If someone only asks you to buy something, doesn't it feel a little scammy? A little like fishy when someone just calls you out of the blue and they're like, "Hey, do you want to buy our new gutters?" And you're like, "I don't know who you are. I think my gutters are fine."
This is a very big point that you're making that people should understand. This is like you need people interested. You need social proof. Going and trying to run a campaign with 10 followers, that doesn't create anyone's ability to have confidence that you're someone that they can trust.
Well, and the community-led piece often turns folks off, but there isn't a single company on my resume that wasn't successful with community-led. Not a single one. And like Tableau, I'll throw that one out. Tableau had user groups that probably was the biggest lead gen thing they ever did. Ever. And like they like the data will say that the downloads, like the free trial was what it was, but really it was the user groups. It was these micro communities that Tableau just like infused and supported lightly to let them learn and let their passions come out. And so if you can tap into people's passions, just like us as consumers, then there's an exchange of trust, right? And like I'll throw Robert Cialdini's book out there. It's like there's the principles of influence, right? Like if you can start to build that trust digitally, that's a lot less expensive long term than trying to convince them to buy your random gutters or a random product, right?
Yeah. Do you have essentially a go to community strategy where you go into the, you're like, all right, they're new, they got $1,000, we're starting though. Are there particular channels that you're looking at specifically to start these conversations and build that community?
I try to really unpack in those first few hours or out of my conversations with different business owners where they feel like their communities are. In some cases, they're not online at all, right? Maybe they're at conferences or maybe they're at certain shows or maybe they're meeting up at, places of worship, like whatever that case may be. Or maybe it's a case where like you need to merge in and build a partnerships plan, right? So the channel comes after we understand who the audience is and where they are. Because in some cases, I don't even recommend ads. I say just go the partnership route, right? There was a private equity company that I talked to for a long time, and almost all of their businesses were small businesses with like really slow growth, but steady growth, right? So you're talking about like car washes and dry cleaners, right? They don't need a community on Facebook, but what they need is more of a partner network, right? So like that person who repairs the machine, great, you're going to use their laundromat machines because there's a deal with this other broker to get those machines in. So like you build this network where you're all kind of supporting each other. And so in that channel, it's like direct mail and email, right? There's other cases where a startup will come to me and say like, I don't know where to find people that are looking for improved healthcare documents. Okay, great. It's probably conferences. It's probably compliance workshops. It's probably places where people are like really nitty gritty going after continuing education. Like there's probably places you need to merge into. Maybe you're doing a masterclass event or something like that. But in general, if you go broad, you're going to get broad, right? If you're like, oh, my random product, I'm going to throw it on Facebook, you're going to get broad. And they're going to like, oh, the ads don't work. Well, if we'd started back a few steps and figured out where these people are, maybe you can target based on interest and run that for a couple of weeks. Maybe you can start doing the community led. Maybe you can pair it with some direct mail, right? There's just like us as humans, like as normal consumers, like we don't want to be just communicated through Facebook. Like, could you imagine if your best friend only talked to you through Facebook? That'd be really annoying, right? They never sent you a card. They never showed up to your events. They never responded when you invited them to your wedding. Like that's just naturally not how we have agreed to operate with each other. And so I think it's so funny. There's this disconnect based on like how we want to be treated versus how we expect our customers to engage with us.
No, awesome. And no, it's really interesting. How are you playing those concepts to where you're at now?
Yeah. So at Every, we are very community led. We had a couple individuals on the team that were already like in the startup community. And so they had this crazy idea of like, let's create ambassadors. So there's that motion.
Brand ambassadors.
We talked to probably 250, 300 founders a month right now, face to face. but it's for things that help them. It's not things that help us. So it's like pitch practices. It's understanding how to get a yes from an investor before they even go into the meeting. It's finding your co-founder, right? It's these kind of like things that they don't normally have space to deal with, or maybe they are part of an incubator program like YC or Antler or Alchemist, but they don't really have the time to talk about these things, right? Then there's the flip side of it where we do go to some of the bigger events and we have these one-on-one conversations and we're sitting there next to these big, huge brands like Trinet and Navan and like all these things, and Concur. And they're like, how come you guys don't exist? And we start asking them questions about their business. We don't even have to talk about ours. It's because when they start telling me, hey, like I'm trying to get product market fit, but yeah, bookkeeping, I'm spending $3,000 a month on. We're like, hey, we can help you with that, right? And so it's that consultative approach that works really well in scenarios where we know we can help, right? We can help solve a problem. Versus what I see a lot of companies do is they lead with the product. Hey, we do X, Y, and Z. Here's our 50 features. Don't you want it? And they're like, I don't know. That's very overwhelming, right? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. I don't know, right?
Sounds like an engineer-led company. Hey, you need this. This is why. I know you need this. And they're like, wait a minute, you don't know us.
Yeah. And I think I got, so, and I think it's jarring, right? Because we don't normally interact with that sort of behavior before in our normal lives. The other thing that we do is we do a lot of retargeting. So folks will come in because we offer incorporation for free, and they don't know about the rest of the things we do. So we have time to kind of like, hey, here's tax season, here's whatever.
That's a nice save. That. Free incorporation's huge.
We do.
I paid, I don't know, like $1,500.
Oh, wow. So so the beauty of that is because we have so many different types of products, we do a very consultative experience. So we'd be like, hey, Jason, did you know there's a tax implication when you incorporate? You'd be like, yes, no. Hey, do you have a co-founder? Here's what you think about with that. Okay, great. Here's all your articles of incorporation. Here's what to give your equity management tool, whether it's Carta or something like that, right? So we walk through the whole process with them every step of the way so they're not blind going into it. Oh, it sounds like you have an employee in Oregon. And it sounds like you're thinking about moving to Washington. Here's the implications of that. Here's the compliance.
That's great. Yeah.
So it's that sort of like all the way through from our marketing, through talking to our ops team, to the actual experience over the product. It's consistently that we care.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's something that I think is hard for a lot of businesses to keep that value all the way through the journey, just as if you were having a relationship with an individual, right? You want to be consistent all the way through. You don't want to be like all of a sudden now you're ghosting them, right?
There's nothing there. Let's go.
Yes. And so that's the piece where I feel like it's hard sometimes for marketers to be able to do their best work because they're not in a position to mirror the company's experience, or the company doesn't want to mirror that experience. And so there's this kind of disconnect there that like, it sounds really great in the marketing messaging, but when you actually start working with the product, it hurts and the customers don't feel it, right? The best thing you can have, the best thing for a marketer, when I think about like, if somebody's looking for a new job at a company, go and find a company with very little churn. That's where you're going to be happiest.
Very little what? Churn?
Churn. Yeah.
Churn.
Where customers are sticking around. Retention is high. Maybe the reason they leave is because their company shuts down, but that's like the only reason. Like that's the best place to be.
Yeah. You establish relationships, they like it. And then if they start dropping off, it's probably you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. When I've been at companies before where they have really high churn, I will literally turn the marketing engine to focus on customers. And people are like, well, what about top of funnel? And I'm like, nope, like we have to get
money's right here. It's sitting right in front of you. What do you need to keep burning through dollars to get new customers for? Yeah.
And a lot of companies do hyper focus on top of funnel. I'm like, oh, we need more leads. I'm like, but you have all these people already in your stadium and then no one's on stage. No one's telling them anything. No one's entertaining them.
Yeah.
No one's giving a chance for them to network. Right.
But I think what you're also saying is that it takes a marketer with experience to understand that, because
absolutely,
if you come in, like I see these companies, they'll hire these young marketers and like, they're a lot less and they're coming out of this Ivy League school and they're doing these things and something like you're saying, like they're not even going to have that on their radar to be like, hey, customer success needs to be in place so that way we can maintain what we got going on. So that way everything additional builds the revenue. It's not like, we're churning and burning to maintain a baseline.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, awesome.
And like, and young marketers are awesome too. Like, I don't think that like companies should steer away from them.
No, not at all.
I think the sense there is like, if I was to hire a young marketer because I couldn't hire anybody else, I would hire someone who has extensive customer service experience and was probably also an athlete.
Good point.
So like those two like elements are they're naturally going to be trained to think about like, oh, what's the experience like? Oh, wow, this was kind of rough, but I have resilience. Oh, wow, I'm thinking about the long term. It's going to take me 300 reps to be able to get what I need, right? So like having that kind of like methodology when you're hiring, but then you also have to be committed to investing in them, right? To help them understand how the business works.
A lot of companies don't do that. A lot of companies don't do that. Yeah.
Well, they could do it.
They can do it. I'm saying I just see a lot of them not do it. You know, like, all right, we got you. You go, and then we want you to figure out how to do everything. We want you to do other research. We're not going to give you anything to help you do these things.
Well, I think it's possible, and it would probably be a lot less expensive than they think to get it done right.
Oh, for sure. Because then you've got someone at a certain, at a labor rate that essentially they've trained up to work at a higher labor rate, but they're still at that.
And you've raised them in your culture. You've raised them to understand your audience. Mm-hmm. You've raised them to understand the biggest problems of your business. And like, that is hard to learn. And especially like, I'll throw one bone at the young folks is like, often they're coachable versus like some of the more senior marketers are like, I'm going to bring out my playbook from my previous 4 battles and it's probably going to work. And it never does. And then you see these high turnover rates of CMOs. It's like, because the executive team and the CMO aren't aligned, but the CMO is still trying to play that old playbook because they never gave themselves or their team a chance to really understand the customer.
Yeah.
And in my philosophy, at least from a B2B marketer, is like my team should be an extension to scale the sales team. We should be aligned philosophically, value-wise. I should be able to take one of my marketers and plunk them into a sales call.
Yeah.
Like that's been a philosophy that I don't think a lot of folks believe in. But for me, I'm like, I want them to be able to step into the position of, hey, I can help you customer. If I don't know, I'll go find out for you.
I've had my sales team or my marketing team, when I've run marketing sales, I have them go on a few calls.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And they change like how they operate if they've never done it before. Because one, sales is not as easy as it may sound to them. And then 2, they learn like, oh my God, all this stuff I need to know as a sales agent. Like this is stuff that they're asking. We need to put this in our content. Like they start finding the nuggets.
Yeah. So there's an interesting point right there. One of the best lead gen tips that I've told all companies, if your website has the best answers to your customers' most common asked questions, you're going to win SEO.
Yeah.
You don't need any of that gray, black, white hat stuff. Like I did SEO for a long time. Some of it's helpful for accessibility and some search engines, but if you have the best answers because you listen to your customers, that's what's going to win it over.
Great point. Yeah, that's it. Build your community, invest in generating success in your current customers, invest in your people, and answer their questions on their site. Awesome. So where can people connect with you to learn more about what you're doing?
Oh, I mean, LinkedIn's easy, pretty easy to find. Lyndi Thompson, pretty easy to find. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can reach out. I'm happy to tell you more about if that's helpful. If you just want to like sniff around my network and you want an introduction to someone, I'm more than happy to do that as well. I feel like my network has been by far the best thing I've ever invested in. And so I definitely still believe that. So I'm so happy to have shared with you, Jason, and had the time to chat. I love the work that you're doing as well. And feel free for folks to check in. Happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Okay.